Hello, everyone. It's Mrs. Ruscio with the 6.7 Solving Quadratics with Square Roots video. This is a super fun unit. We're going to definitely, and not unit, topic is what I meant to say. What we are definitely going to use is our calculators, so be prepared. As Scar would say. Did you like my Disney reference? That was amazing. Okay, so number one, find all values of x that make x squared equals 16 true. Okay, so what number times itself equals 16? And a lot of you would be like, it's 4. But I would challenge you and say, I think it's 4 and negative 4. Because 4 times 4 is definitely 16, and a negative times a negative is a positive. So negative 4 times negative 4 is definitely also 16. So 4 and negative 4 are the winners. All right, number 2, find the roots of the equation. Well, you remember when we solved the previous days that whenever you see an f of x, you make it 0. Yes, you are right. I'm glad that you thought of that before I said it. Did you see how I paused a little, let your brains think? Okay, so here's the cool part here. You guys know how to factor, right? You could do x plus 3, x minus 3, and balance it this way. Or I want to show you something cool. I'm sorry, that was mean. I didn't tell you to maybe erase it, or that we would maybe erase it. We're going to add 9 to both sides. And I am then going to get x squared is equal to 9. Now, some of you, you're like, that just made me so uncomfortable because you've been telling us not to do this, but we are in the special zone where this is allowed, and we're going to talk about it in a little bit more as to why this was allowed. Maybe you already know why we can do it, and we couldn't do that in the 6.5 and 6.6 notes. Then, take the square root of both sides. And when you take the square root, you put a plus or minus, because it could be a positive number or a negative number. So the square root of 9 is 3, because 3 times 3 is 9. So x is going to equal positive 3 and negative 3. Sometimes we write it in this nice, pretty package. Sometimes we write it as like x equals 3 and x equals negative 3. Sometimes we even do something funky and put it in set notation, which I think you saw in the previous videos, which looks something like that. They all mean the same thing. All right, now number 3, solve algebraically for x. So x squared is equal to 12. Hey, this is pretty cool. I can just take the square root of both sides, but this is kind of gross. X ends up equaling, well, the square root of 12 is not, that's making me uncomfortable. That's making me uncomfortable. This is not going to work out for us. It's not factorable. I don't know what to do here. Well, I guess I could just put a plus or minus and leave it as radical 12, so I make sure that I keep it exact. I could also maybe simplify the radical, but I don't think that we've talked about it yet. Some of you might say, Mrs. Ruscio, just type it into your calculator. But if I do that, I get like this nasty decimal. Actually, I should be getting a nastier decimal than that. My calculator is doing some weird rounding thing that I gotta fix. But anyways, what we have just talked about is a new way to solve quadratic equations. So that being said, let's talk about what we can do from here on out. We can use square roots when there is not an x term. So what do I mean by that? Like if we had x squared plus 2x minus 7 equals 0, we would not be able to use this method because of that guy right there in the middle, that term. Okay, number 4. I like number 4 so much better than number 3 because check it out. It gave me a direction. It told me to round to the nearest hundredth. So I look at this, I say, sweet, I love this little structure when it's just plain old, this cute little x squared equaling a number. Take the square root, and when you take the square root, you put a plus or minus. And then what we have to do is type it into our calculator so we can round to the nearest hundredth. So that would be 7.74 or 7.75. I hope you said 7.75. All right, here's some directions. When we solve equations where radicals are included in our answer, oh my goodness, answer. Just developed a lisp there for a minute. Mathematicians sometimes like these radicals to be written in what we call simplest radical form. If I could put flashing red lights to say this is a big deal, this is a big deal, and I'd put the flashing lights down. We give you down here the perfect squares. The one that I'm not really liking right now is the 1 squared because we never use that to simplify. But one thing that we're going to do is we're going to find the biggest perfect square, and then we're going to simplify and write it as a product of 2 radicals. These steps are just a reference. I'm not going to totally go through everything, or actually maybe I will because there's a cute little example hanging out here. So what we did in this first step was we took the square root of both sides. Then we recognized that 45 had a perfect square factor. 4 didn't divide into it, 9 did, so we're going to use that. Another way that I think actually works a little bit better is starting from the highest and going to the lowest. So can 36 divide into 45? I know that it can't, but let me just show you how you could prove it on your calculator. It's going to give you an icky fraction, so that wouldn't be it. And then 25 isn't going to be it. The same problem would happen. 16 wouldn't be it. So the biggest perfect square factor is 9 with the 5 left over. So 9 times 5 is 45. 9 is always a perfect square. This is a big deal. And the square root of 9 is 3 because when you take the square root, you put a plus or minus, which is right there. So you need to make sure it's there. All right, let's do a couple examples on our own. Oh, I love how this is here. Now, if you ever need help, you can always create your own set of perfect squares. Is this, it's really hard to see. Yeah. So you're going to do 2, 3, 4, and so on and so forth. However far out you want to go. For lack of time, I'll just do all of those and square it all. It'll show all of these perfect squares. Like if I had done 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, you would have seen all of the rest of these guys down below. All right, 5 and 6, directions say, find the solution and write your answer as a radical in simplest form. This is a big deal to me because sometimes it might say round. So I'm going to look at this and I notice that it's already in the format I need. I need to find a perfect square factor that divides into 27, and it has to be the biggest one. So we're going to first check out 25, not it. 16 doesn't divide into 27. 9, yes. So we're going to write the square root of 9 times the square root of, 9 times what is 27? If you're not sure, just type in 27 divided by 9 on your calculator. 3. So that's left over. And when you take the square root, you put a plus or minus. So it should be there. The square root of 9 is 3. So my final answer would be 3 square roots of 3. We just brought this little guy down. The 9 became this. There's our final answer. And now moving on to 6, I'm noticing that with 6, my 48 is not where it should be. And I know right now you're probably getting angry because you're like, but Mrs. Ruscio, it's set equal to 0. But these special cases let us do this. So what we're going to do, move it over, take the square root of both sides. And what we're going to try to do is figure out the biggest perfect square factor. When you take the square root, you put a plus or minus. And we got to find what goes into these. So what number divides into 48? And some of you might be like 6 times 8. But the problem if you use 6 times 8, neither one of those are perfect squares. That's gross. That's not helping us out at all. So 48. Some of us might want to start from the bottom up, and this is where danger central happens. So 48 fits in between 36 and 49. So I would start out by dividing 48 by 36 if I wasn't sure what to do. It got me a fraction, so then I'm going to try 48 divided by 25. That's not going to work, so maybe I'll try 48 divided by 16, and holy cannoli, it worked. So we know that this would have been 16 times 3. Let me show you a problem that some people might encounter. Some of you might do 48 divided by 4 and get 12. And you might have done something like the square root of 4 times the square root of 12. The reason why it's so dangerous to go from the bottom up instead of from the top down is you don't pull out the biggest perfect square. And you can tell this because 12 has two factors, 4 and 3, and oh my gosh, there's a perfect square hiding in that second one. So we really want to be careful to find the biggest square, perfect square factor. That's why we work from the top down, not the bottom up. So x equals plus or minus 16, the square root of that is 4. So 4 square roots of 3. All right, number 7. Here we go. Number 7. Here we go. 7 is x squared minus 50 equals 550. All right, so we're going to what? We're going to add 50 to both sides, right? That's then when we'll get x squared is equal to 600. Holy cannoli, that is a large number. Let's think smarter and not harder here. 600 has 2 zeros. That one, I feel like we're going to go with this one. Let's just try it and see where we're at. If I take the square root of 600, I take the square root, I put a plus or minus, I'm going to get 100 times 6. Yeah, 6 doesn't have a perfect square, so we know that what we did was right. So x equals plus or minus 10 square roots of 6. All right, here's number 8. How are we going to get this guy alone? Let's multiply both sides by 2. So what do we get? X squared is equal to, is that correct, 98? 49 times 2. Why is my brain melting down? Yeah, I did it right. I don't know why I'm second guessing myself. Okay, why did I do that? Well, the opposite of multiplying by 1/2 is multiplying by 2. Don't divide both sides by 1/2. Don't do it. Don't be that guy or girl. All right, you guys know what to do. Take the square root of both sides. Get it over with. X equals, 98. Oh, they're down here. Cool. Let's work smarter, not harder. 81 isn't going to be a factor. 64, not going to be a factor. 49, I think is a factor. Well, yeah, duh, it's a factor. We just multiply that. So 49 times 2. So 98 divided by 49. If you needed some calculator verification, don't forget the plus minus. So x equals plus or minus 7 square roots of 2. And before I end the video, it's going to be super quick. I just wanted to talk about one little thing of something that you are going to see in the future. But sometimes you're just going to see x squared equaling something. But one thing, and this is kind of just like a side note of Miss Ruscio being crazy, but sometimes you might see something like x plus 1 all squared equaling 9, and you can actually do the same thing that we just did over in these examples by taking the square root of both sides when it's written in that nice pretty package. So that's something to look forward to in the future, because I know all of you look forward to doing math on your own time or on time that you're forced to watch these videos. But yeah, that's just one thing that you're going to see in the next video.